Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Eden Army podcast. No, I am not Pete Robertucci, but my name is Russ Sawyer, and I will be your guest host for this evening. Pete is off tonight. He is celebrating his daughter's 23rd birthday, and so they take her out to dinner, and they're doing the father-daughter, mama, daddy, and all that stuff. But welcome. Kick Chat is already blowing up over there. We got everybody and the brother over there. But first off, I do want to thank Mama T, K Love, Guy Williams, Bullshite, Will Gomez, and the great Larry Dial for resubscribing. We got a pretty good show for you guys tonight. Got Paulie will be with us, of course, and then of course we have Sue Larreau and Roy Dorn, two fellow veterans, and we're going to talk tonight about the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth's new directives, and we're going to give you guys our opinions on it. Updates. Matthew is working very hard on Audible for Battlefield Birchwood. Hopefully it'll get done here sooner rather than later. For those of you that don't like to read, I don't see our good friend Kelly in the house yet, so I wasted that one. But we got a lot to discuss about this. We're going to try to cover all of his 10 major points, but we'll get this thing kicked off, and I'll bring everybody on after this very important message. You fucker! You laughed, you mocked, you shut us down. Called us names, tried to run us out. You pushed too hard, took too much. Now you're the ones who've lost their touch. You rigged the game, you changed the rules. Gaslit the world, played us for fools. But tides have turned, the storm is near. Cry all you want, we're still here. Faithful, fuck around and find out. You tried to rule, but your time ran out. Faithful, the silent won't stay quiet now. We're taking back what you burned to the ground. Censorship, lockdowns, all your control. Built your throne on a house of gold. Now you panic, now you cry. Tears don't work, truth don't lie. The games are done, the mask fell off. No more lies, we had enough. You played with fire, now taste the flame. This time, we're naming names. Faithful, fuck around and find out. You tried to rule, but your time ran out. Faithful, the silent won't stay quiet now. We're taking back what you burned to the ground. You called us threats, you called us extreme, but we remember everything. From 24 and beyond, take your bets, 'cause guess what? We ain't done yet. Faithful, fuck around and find out. Your kingdom's crumbled, your luck ran out. Faithful, no more games, no more doubts. You lit the fire, now it's burning you down. Well, that's a way to get us fired up tonight. I love that song. That song just kicks butt, man. I love it. So let's go ahead and bring our guest on. First off, we're going to bring the youngin in the group, Mr. Paulie Ham.
Howdy,
How
howdy,
you doing tonight,
everybody.
Paulie?
I'm good. I
And
don't
let
know
me
if
go
everybody
ahead
could
and
see.
bring it.
I don't know if you could see me in the green room, but I was air drumming the whole
Oh
time.
yeah, oh yeah. Have you not seen that yet?
I
Have you
have.
not seen it yet?
I've listened to it a few
It,
times
yeah,
since we played it a few weeks ago.
it's pretty kick ass. Let me see here. Let's go ahead and bring these other two back in. We're going to bring in the legendary Roy Dorn, our resident crayon eater,
Howdy,
and
howdy.
lastly, the one and only Sue Larreau, rocking the Canadian tuxedo, loving it. So, man, I'm excited about this show tonight. Number one, I get to host. I don't do it that often, and the last time, like I blew chunks all over the place, and have a great bunch of guest hosts on here with me. And believe it or not, guys, we have over 70 years, 71 years of military service on the screen here. Paulie did 4 years. Yesterday was my 20-year anniversary of being retired. And Roy did 20 years, 21 days, and 4 hours. He's very specific about that.
That's
And
22
Sue did
days.
27 years. Yeah, 22 days. My bad, close enough. And Sue did over 27 years, 9 months. So we have a wealth of experience here. And I think what we want to do tonight is we're definitely going to talk about the Secretary of War's directives that he recently put out. So, being retired over 20 years now, I don't have a dog in the fight anymore. But because of being in the military for 20 years, I still take pride of having been in the military, and I want to see the military. And I don't think we've done that in the last several years, especially in the last several years. So we'll go around the horn, and we'll start with the youngin. Paulie, what was your initial reaction when you saw, whether you watched the speech or read the directives? What was your first impression? Your
I
first reaction?
was, I was excited about the accountability for senior personnel, especially when it comes to PT things like that. Um, my view, I told you a story last night. Is we had a lot of senior enlisted personnel that could not pass PRT, and then wanted to give me shit about not passing the run. So I was real excited about that part. A lot of the weapons retraining and stuff, I think is highly important as well.
Okay. What about you, Roy?
I was just it brought back a lot of pride. There's going to be pride back. I think since I retired 2004, I still go to the exchange and the commissary. It's embarrassing to see, a master sergeant or somebody that's better than I am, and I've been retired for 20 years. And that to me is just sad.
Exactly.
If you outweigh the ruck you're carrying, and it's all around your midsection, it ain't going to strap up. So I was very happy to hear it, very happy to see it. I'm very proud of where we are today, and especially once it starts getting going. I'll be happy to see how it rolls.
Absolutely. And what about you, Sue?
I just, I was, Pete Hegseth, Department of War. He noticed that all the rebuttals from the Democratic Party still call it Department of Defense. I'm really glad they changed it to Department of War, but
changed it back too.
When we actually won wars, World War II, we actually won it, flat out won it. He blamed the last administration, the Biden administration, but I think it's been going on a lot longer than that. I retired in 2016. I can remember clear back when I came in, Russ, we came in about the same time. I was in 1981. I can remember Pat Schroeder from Colorado, which was embarrassing to me because I'm a native of Colorado. But Pat Schroeder was trying to decrease the PT standards and no more rough football, no more hazing and that kind of stuff. She was the senator, congressman,
Mm-hmm.
really tried to use the military as a social experiment, and we'll get into more of the 10 points we're going to talk about, but the military is not a place for social experiments. The military is there to fight war and win wars, period. If you don't understand that,
Amen, brother.
The other thing that I think people need to understand is all these hidden agendas don't come from most of the people in the military. Granted, they get lazy and they get fat and they get out of shape because of them.
Mm-hmm.
But remember what I always said on the other podcast, we have 770,000 civilians in the Department of Defense. 35% of the federal workforce works for the Department of Defense, now Department of War. If we could just get rid of 400,000 of them, we would never know they were gone.
Well, they got rid of over 100,000 of them on the 30th.
Yes.
Over 100,000 of them punched their ticket on the 30th. So that's a good start. In my opinion.
Just start somewhere.
Yeah. So for those of you over there in the peanut gallery, we're going to use hashtag SECWAR for our podcast tonight. If you want to have a question that or comment that you'd like us to address while we're going through this, Mr. Pauly is now the man behind the curtain tonight. He's going to be running all the buttons and everything, which will help me out a little bit, which is kind of cool. I get to sit here and just run my mouth.
I get to be Russ tonight.
Before we go,
my internet's going to cut in and out.
No, mine will take care of that all its own. So, there was a quick question I saw during the FAFO video. Patrick, yes, some of the classes, and it was answered over in chat, but yes, some of the classes over at Fallout do cost money. I should say once Rob the classes settled and all the schedule out, it'll tell some of them, like Alan's course, of course, does cost, but you should be fine. Let's see here. So that was initial interaction. So I'm gonna play another video real quick, and this was a little short one. I thought this one was funny. I know for Roy and Sue, we watched this as young enlisted, junior enlisted folks. You'll catch where it's coming from the clip. It'll hit you. Roy is going to hit you right here. It'll hit you right here. Trust me.
Well, then quit talking and hit the button.
I'm going to hit the button, and then we'll be right back.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, General Pyle?
Sir, jelly donuts, sir!
A jelly donut?
Sir, yes, sir!
How did it get here?
That was awesome.
One of my favorite movies, especially the first part of that movie. I can't tell you how many times we watched that. We had what's called a fire team facility where we had our interior fire team station, and we watched that movie like 2 or 3 times in a 6-day cycle. And but I saw that, I was like, I got to play this one tonight. So I knew you'd get a kick out of that one, Roy.
I appreciate that. That was a good one.
Yeah. So let's we're going to move on to some of these talking points. I really like the one when he was talking about the focus on war fighting, that we are war fighters. We're preparing for war, winning, unrelenting, uncompromising. And the fact that he actually, he looked at him and says, and to our enemies, mess around, FAFO. And if you don't understand it, ask your junior enlisted. I was like, absolutely correct. And I paraphrased that because I didn't write it down. But, Sue, you and I have had offline discussions, Roy, so you and I. The focus on warfighting, preparing, and winning, like you said just a few minutes ago, Sue, is of utmost importance. So what do you guys think on that one? And I don't care who goes first.
I'm gonna leave it. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it to you guys because you guys were in much longer than I was.
I'm just
Yeah,
so
I
much
went to when I first showed up in Sarajevo in 1993. The Dayton Peace Accords were still going on, so I put on a French smock and a French helmet, and it was the blue helmet, the UN helmet, and I couldn't believe the crap that they were taking, And because I could speak French, I was hanging around with the French anti-sniper cell, and we were getting ready for NATO to take over the mission and everything. But I can remember a little Bosnian kid jumping up on the little armored car called a Fox, and he spit in my face. He just hated the French that bad. And I was like, God damn it, and I cussed in English. And this kid, he recognized the English, and he goes, "Oh, I thought you were French," And I think that's where our military has become is, a lot of these peacekeeping missions, a lot of these just send the troops wherever. Started with the Clinton administration. We would show up in Bosnia and Somalia and just stand there and even in Iraq, for God's sakes, where we send our kids over to do vehicle checkpoints. No mission, no objective. We're not really there. We're trying to do nation building, but we are sacrificing our youth to stand there and get shot at, spit on, or rocks thrown at them for absolutely no reason. I hope that attitude changes completely. I hope that everywhere that our military goes, people are absolutely scared to death to defile American troops or say.
Absolutely.
The USS Cole is a good example.
Oh, absolutely. Over in Yemen. I remember that. What about you, Roy?
So when I retired as a instructor group chief at our MCT East here at Lejeune. So my group was the instructors for all non-infantry Marines. Every Marine that went to boot camp came to either MCT or ITB. If you were going infantry, ITB. If you were not infantry, MCT. Bringing that out, and me and Julie were just talking about it because she was Air Force. She had like 1 day of rifle training, but we have unfortunately learned from our misgivings and our mistakes, and it costs lives when you don't train the people that are on infantry on how to take care of themselves. Bad things happen. So I'm ecstatic about, like, for the Marine Corps, every Marine a rifleman, but now it goes even on the Army side that the cooks wouldn't get combat training. The Navy, the same thing. I mean, you'd have gunner's mates, but in the Army, unless you're an 11 boot or in that circle, and Richard McMahon, we talk a lot.
Oh yeah.
Unless you're in that circle, you don't get any kind of training on how to protect yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, and if he kicks that off into the Air Force and the Navy, and then the rest of the Army guys, like the Marine Corps does, I think that will come about to where when we as the United States go somewhere, fear through the possibility of superior firepower from the cook, from the admin guy, from, well, we don't have dispersing officers no more, but whoever you are. So,
well, exactly. And being in the Air Force, and I was a cop in the Air Force Security Forces, and we lived out of Field Manual 7-8, the infantry field manual. We did a lot of air-based ground defense. We were the defenders of the base. When I deployed to Iraq, I deployed to Kirkuk, and we were in charge of the perimeter for Kirkuk. It started back in Vietnam when Tan Son Nhut Air Base. That's after Tan Son Nhut Air Base. That's when we really started to embrace the ground defense concept. And when I retired, I hired on as a civilian, and that was exactly what I was doing. I was teaching non-cops how to protect themselves over in the AOR. Now they weren't working like TCN duty or any, third country national duties. You guys both know that term, where they had guards guarding all the third country nationals that were working on base. But that's where we need to get to. So the gun toters, whether it be 11 bangers, security forces, armies, the Army infantry, all of those, where they can go out and do the work that they're trained to do versus sitting there babysitting the fob, if that makes sense to me, to you guys. From my perspective, it frees up a gun toter to go do real gun toter stuff. Because I'm sorry, whether you're a cook, whether you're a maintainer, you can still take a rotation, provide mission priorities, of course. You can take a rotation and sit a defensive fighting position for 12 hours guarding the perimeter.
Well, your little video from Full Metal Jacket, the Vietnam era.
Oh yeah.
The star, whatever he was, Joker, was a combat correspondent.
Yeah.
But during Tet, you've got a combat correspondent out there next to an M60 doing, and that's I'm just glad to see it going across the other services, because I know a lot of people in the other services, and what's been happening in our recent history is just pathetic. So, and I agree with Sue. It started way before this past administration. It started.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, absolutely. I came in 84, and it was, you could see some changes, especially in unfortunately, the other branches. But in what I was doing back then, I was able to work with the Army guys and the Navy guys. I didn't see much Air Force back in them days, but we talked a lot.
Oh yeah.
You're always on the radio up in the air.
Oh yeah. But I mean, having that warrior ethos, that warrior mindset, is something that has been severely lacking in the military, I think, for a long time. That was one of the reasons I decided to retire when I did. I knew that the things were, because I retired in 05 right after you did, Roy. The writing on the wall was just not where I thought it needed to be. So Will Gomez has a question for you there, Sue. What is your impression of currently serving SF? Are they truly war fighters, or are they PowerPoint Rangers? And you can choose to answer that if you wish.
Yeah, Will said that I joined the Army in 1781. You're right, Will. I had a muzzle loader and a tomahawk.
Yeah.
Right? But no, the current SF is going through some changes too, because now in the almost 10 years that I've been out, things have drastically changed, especially when you're talking about drones and cyber security or cyber warfare, information warfare. They're really leaning a lot towards that, not to the point of PowerPoint Rangers, but the technology is really getting in there, and we saw it in Iraq. All of us did,
and we see it in Ukraine.
Guys, everywhere you go in the world, cell phone, social media. The Arab Spring was social media, but SF. Remember what SF's mission is. It's to basically recruit civilian people and put them through that basic training that we're all talking about. No matter what
fight their own war
was before, or what your occupation was, during the wartime, you should be able to pick up a rifle and go fight. And that's what SF does. I don't care if you're an 18 Delta, an 18 Charlie, 18 Echo, Commo, medic, whatever.
Yep.
Your job is to be an advisor and basically run a basic training for a bunch of recruits, advisors. And what I did see, especially right before I retired, was a lot of SF guys like to kick that door. They like to be in the stack, be in the sniper position. And I'm like, what are you doing? If you want to do that, go back to the Rangers. Go back to the 82nd.
Well, and I've known a lot of SF guys, and I 100% agree. all my studying in the history of the military, because I did a lot of studying on that. SF's role is to train the indigenous personnel to fight their own war.
Yes.
And I think, unfortunately, the Gulf War and the movies that came out of it and around it has bastardized what people think SF is. Does that make sense, Sue?
Yeah, we're not the commandos, we're not the Rambos. I mean, we don't fly helicopters, and we don't have a plethora of talents. Our talent is to be able to recruit, train, equip, and pay, figure it all out,
Yep.
And
exactly
like the old Warren Zevon song, the State Department or the CIA is supposed to come in and they're supposed to bring us, guns and lawyers, guns and money,
Yep, absolutely. So the next three we're going to cover, I'm going to kind of lump them all into one category, because it's all about standards of dress and physical appearance. And we're going to talk a little bit about what Hegseth came out and said about the universal male level physical fitness standards. We're going to talk about the no more fat generals, which was kind of what that little clip was. And if you panned the screen, watch the panning of the screen, you had a lot of uncomfortable generals there watching that. And then, of course, the ban on beards and non-standard grooming, which there are some things I'll agree to disagree on it. But let's get into that. So, Paulie, you touched on briefly in the intro about the fitness standards. So I'm going to start with you, and I want you to tell your story if you're willing, as long as you don't think you'll get in trouble.
Which, the one we were talking about last night?
Yeah, the one we talked about last night. Because I agree with it, and I like the way the ending happened, because obviously that chief was somewhat old school.
Yeah,
and he to me, he handled it like I would have.
So long story short is, the PRT in the Navy is the push-ups, sit-ups, 1.5 mile run. I did not hit my 1.5 mile run at all, and my chief decided that, he's going to read me the riot act on it. And I'm just sitting there looking at him. I'm like, with all due respect, you're definitely overweight. You didn't pass the tape test. You're not passing. You're not out running with us. And it came to a back and forth about, I bet you I could still finish with a better time than you. And that went down. He finished, I'd say 2 to 3 minutes after I did. And by the time we got back to the ship, it was like, well, you passed PRT. And I was like, I definitely didn't hit my 1.5 mile time. I was close to getting out. I was putting on weight. And he just, here we go. We'll sign this off. You passed. Your numbers were better, and here we go. It's you can't be mad at I guess when you were benefiting from that, the minor corrupt stuff there, but at the same time, it shows that, how are they going to hold me to a standard that they can't even uphold themselves?
Absolutely. And especially with the height and weight standards, to me they are a little skewed. If a person can do their job and still make like the runs and stuff like that, but they're overweight, but they still do everything else right, and they still want to kick you out because you're overweight because you don't meet that number, I think that's wrong. But it is what it is. That's what the rules are, and that's the rules we play by. So what about you? We'll go Sue this time. We'll let Roy to tag in on this one. What do you think about the new physical fitness standards that he's implementing?
Paul is exactly right. I mean, it's one of the core leadership principles is lead by example, right?
Absolutely.
If you can't set the example, and I understand that there's times people get hurt, or they, you might have a knee operation or something where you gain a little bit of weight. I understand that. You should get a pass on that. But if you're in a leadership position, you should be leading by example, period. All right.
Absolutely.
And I'll go back, kind of a short war story. I was coming back in the Army, for a third time. I had a hard time making decisions, and after the divorce, I came
You-
back in the Army in 1990. Well, I'm sorry, 2000. And
yeah, your military service is broken up like your divorces.
yeah. I got stuck running the students in the Q course, right, until I went to this board of sergeant majors to determine whether I could go back to special forces. So I'm running the special forces students, and I was in good shape. I ran. We did a 10-mile run, and the last sprint, I said, "Okay, guys, follow me," and I ran. Well, I had 60 students, and these guys came dragging in. I finally got them in formation, and I mean, I was cussing them out and pointing my finger, or knife handing, I should say. And I said, if you want to run like women, go the hell back to whatever mess kit company you came from. And right then, behind all the students, a little female walked out and just started bawling, right? And we continued on with our PT and push-ups, sit-ups type stuff. And this guy come and got me and said, "Hey, my first sergeant wants to see you." So I went in to see the first sergeant. He didn't know who I was. I was E7 at the time, but I was in PT clothes. I said, "Yes, first sergeant." And that female was sitting in front of the first sergeant's desk. He said, "Did you say they can't run by women? Your men can't run by women. They need to go back." And I said, "That's exactly what I said, first sergeant." And he goes, "Why'd you say that?" And I said, "Well, you got a PT card?" And I took the PT card and I turned it around back. I said, "How old are you, miss?" She goes, I'm 19, well, going on 20. I said, "Okay, your 2-mile run is 16:01. All right. Most of my guys are 25, 26. Look at that, 16:01. They get a 65%. In the Q course, you have to pass every event in the PT test with an 80%. So if they want to run like women, they don't get a big break.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I still had to go see the sergeant major about that. And the sergeant major left the door open and everything. He says, "I'm going to act like I'm chewing you out, but that was the right thing to say."
Absolutely. Absolutely right. And I'm going to pop this comment up on the screen from Corey, also known as Battle Gnome, because it kind of applies to what we're doing, and it goes right along with what you were just saying, Sue. So for all the women screaming about the universal standards because there are biological differences, yet you're fine with biological men and women's sports. You can't have it both ways. 100%.
100%.
Absolutely agree with that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely agree with that. So, Roy, what's your take on these new standards? Especially considering they're going to be using what it looks like going to be the Marine Corps standard or the Army standard.
So my biggest pet peeve throughout my career was when somebody was told he was overweight, and yet he could drag anybody in the teams. He could shoot, he can run, and everything else, but his body, what was that called?
The BMI, body mass index.
Yes,
we talked about that last night too.
Yeah, we did.
BMI is out of regs. I think that's crap. You can't go with some scientific data to figure out whether or not, my 100. Well, all right, we're going to go back a few days. My 175-pound butt carrying, 130 pounds of gear, that doesn't equal. But you've got a guy that's 6'3", weighs 250, and he can carry me and my ruck, and he's overweight. That part there is what always blew my brain for about 20 years.
Even though I was a good runner, I hated running. I always thought running is just proves cowardness.
You're not going to run until you're out of ammo.
His name was Teeny. I could stand behind him, you couldn't see me, and he could carry a house. But every time they, because he had a little ladder
the tape on the neck,
they're like, "Oh, you're overweight. You're overweight. You can't." I was like, the guy is the strongest man in the state of North Carolina. How could you say you can't go?
So that's the one thing that I hope, that I really, really hope that, yes, we got to have standards. We can't have two-way standards. There's got to be a standard's a standard's a standard. A guy who is not in a combat MOS, should he be required to carry a 250-pound bag, maybe not. I'd much rather get paid than him break his back. But at the same time, if he's in a position to be next to me and there's only 4 of us in a freaking hole, I want that guy that can carry that 250-pound bag. So I really I would love to see the people be in shape, be able to pass a PFT, or whatever they're called nowadays.
Yeah.
Physical, cry me to sleep, baby cry thing. But at the same time, you have to be able to do your job.
Yeah.
So in other words,
in other words, in the appearance, we don't need a bunch of marathon runners with nipples sticking out their back. We don't need skinny people. We need strong people.
We need normal people.
Yeah, we need normal people. Absolutely. And I reached out to a former commander of mine last night because I wanted to get, because all of us were enlisted, and I wanted to get an officer's perspective of it. And I'm not going to disclose his name or where he was stationed, but his comment was, number one, this has been a long time coming. He mentioned when after he deployed to Iraq, he realized the importance of physical fitness, and he went on to do 2 other different jobs before he retired at 45. And at 45, for his last PT test, he scored a 97 percentile at age 45. But his last two assignments, he ensured they were doing daily PT, and he was out there with them every time. And that goes back to what you were saying, Sue. Number one, lead by example. And number 2, having that physical fitness of being able, and like you alluded to, Roy, being able to drag my fat ass back to the corpsman or back to the aid station to get me out of the line of fire. Or even that, Sue, going through some tactical rifleman's courses, you're trying to move around cover. You grab the person, you want to try to get them behind cover so you can, number one, continue fire, and being able to get yourself out of that jam if you have to. And a lot of that, of course, is up here, not necessarily muscle strength, it's mental strength.
And you hit the nose right there, Russ. If you PT and you take pride in your nasty, scuzzy little body, the mental part comes with it.
It does.
Because once you get in shape and you can do things, you can maintain. That's where the mentality, the mental hardness comes, I believe. But
yeah, absolutely. And the last part on the grooming standards, before we take another little intermission, because I'm going to show another video, the ban on beards and non-standard grooming. He came out and said, if you want to have a beard, join SF. Now, Sue, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and Roy, you as well, to a certain extent. Beards were not authorized in garrison unless you were on the bubble test to be able to go within 24 or whatever. Am I wrong in assuming that?
You're correct. Beards were allowed for guys who either had to hide their identity, because of social media and everything. Even when you're back in garrison, somebody might recognize you, or there was only a certain, you had to be on that sergeant major's list of having a beard. Matter of fact, I remember one time when my taxi broke down in Baghdad. I used to dress up like an Arab, right? And I'd had beards and I had black hair. I dyed my hair black for over a year, and my taxi had broke down, and I ended up going back to where the sergeant major was, and I was talking to the S2, the intel guys, and the sergeant major came in there, and he had his canteen cup full of coffee, and he had this piece of paper, and he said, "Larreau, what are you doing with a beard? You're not on my list. Why do you have a beard?" And this is Baghdad. We're talking Baghdad, right? I looked at him and I said, "Oh, you don't like it?" And I ripped it off. It was a glue-on beard. I ripped it off and put it in his pocket. He pulled it out. It looked like a drowned rat.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious.
even for a guy like me who dressed up, and I didn't dress up so I could fit in with society. I dressed up so I could do a drive-by. You know, people wouldn't be,
Yeah.
it wasn't obvious. So it was neatly trimmed beard. Even the Iraqis have trimmed hair. Their haircuts like mine, and they have a short beard. You know, they're not real big, long, and stuff like that.
No.
I have seen a lot of guys go to Afghanistan, and they look like Vikings. You know,
Yeah.
and they're
They
cutting their hair
look like they look like members of ZZ Top.
I do not agree with that. I think SF, if you're going to play the part, okay, play the part, grow a beard to look like where you're going and to fit in, not so much as to get into a chess playing club with the local Taliban, but so you can walk down the street and don't draw attention to yourself. That's the only reason.
You're not working undercover narcotics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. You know, in the Air Force, you know, when we did our field exercises, our FDXs, and we're living in foxholes and stuff like that. And you guys remember the old military Mitch helmets. The military helmets were actually the ones before the Mitch, not the steel pots, but the ones in the interim.
The Kevlar helmets.
The Kevlar helmets. For young ladies, if they wore their hair up in a bun properly, they could not get on a prone position because it would fall forward. And we were out on a mid shift working in the defensive fighting positions, and I had 4 young ladies on my squad, and I told them, I said, put your hair in a ponytail and tuck the ponytail inside your shirt, and if somebody says something, just send them to me. I said, because I want you to be able to see the bad guys coming. So that part in a deployed location, I don't have an issue with. And the beards, you know, they say it's because you can't get a seal on a gas mask is the reason you can't have a beard. Okay, I'll agree to disagree. But, you know, ZZ Top, no. Something like Roy's beard that he has going on is clean. It's for lack of a better way of putting it, it's clean, dry, and serviceable. That's just Russ's opinion. But I do also agree that it's that standard, the nice haircut, clean shaven, except for maybe a mustache, that military appearance. That is something that we definitely need to bring back.
Well, they got those new pinks and greens too. The old World War
Oh
II.
yeah, and
I love those. I love those.
My nephew wore those. Yeah, my nephew wore those. And he's not going to be getting rid of shaving profiles. He's just going to make them a little harder and make them adhere to the standard of the shaving profies.
So I actually
back in the 90s.
I want to touch base. Yeah, I want to touch base on what Will said here. I think people are reading too much into that. So in the Navy, you could get a no shave chit, and you just wouldn't have to shave if you could prove that you got ingrown
pseudofolliculitis barbus.
Yeah. But what a lot of guys were doing were using the single blade Bics and shaving real hard, making sure they get razor bumps. It's
or shave against the grain.
Yeah, get an electric razor, hit the beard up, and you'll be fine. It's people just abusing the privilege to be able to get that.
Absolutely. Let's see here. I'll type in something real quick. But yeah, absolutely. And if you're in the field, if you're in combat and you're 3 days away from the fob and you don't shave and you come back in, yes, when you get a chance after you get some rack time, you shave, get back into it, as long as everything is, if you get your downtime. But it is what it is, I reckon. So I'm going to play this. Go ahead.
Let me throw this at you real quick, Russ. So the thing about shaving, and this goes like what Sue was talking about with the SF guys, even some of the SEAL guys, some of my recon guys. So there's a reason to shave in the field, and that is so the cami stick sticks to you, because a beard will get damp from the morning dew and it will shine. You can see it before the sun comes up. So we tried to stay clean shaven, so the cami stick would would work. You know, I think that is part of the stuff that we've gotten away from because of some of our AOs that we work in nowadays. But back in the day when you needed to be green, you couldn't. And even unfortunately, the black guys, they were a little bit worse because their skin was skin was oilier and they would shine more. You know, so when you're in a remain overnight position, any glistening from the dew or anything like that picks up on your skin, it shines, and you don't need MVGs to see it because it's glowing.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's the thing on shaving to me is clean
I'm
shaving.
And there was one exception: extreme cold weather. If you're doing extreme cold training, you did not shave.
Yes,
No.
we would tell you not to shave when I taught that.
You allowed a little bit of stubble to grow on, but you also didn't grow a full bushy ass beard either.
Exactly. And, you know, going back to the FTX I was telling you guys about, it was New Mexico, West Texas, Eastern New Mexico, colder than a witch's tit. And it was so cold that we're in MOP 4, exercise MOP 4, and we're wearing gas masks. And I literally had one of my other squad leaders, the gas mask froze to his face, and he lost a silver dollar sized piece of skin below his chin. And the very next night, I'm working the graveyard shift in the hole. Is just the way the rotation worked out. And my S3 comes popping out, and I'm sitting on the side of the hole having a cigarette with no mask on. He goes, "Russ, we're in Mount 4. He goes, "Why don't you have your mask on?" I said, "Because it's freezing to our face, boss." I said, "None of my kids have it on." I said, "But if the inspectors are come in, and we got ways of knowing that they're coming, they'll put it back on. But until then, I'm not going to. This is an exercise. This is a training exercise. They know how to wear it properly, but I'm not going to risk them getting hurt because of a stupid exercise." He goes, "Okay, man, can I have a smoke?" Because officers aren't supposed to smoke, but it was quite funny. So this next clip, I'm gonna run this next clip, and this is a Republican response. I'll say that this is a Republican response to Hegseth's speech, and we'll watch this, and then we'll come back.
I graduated from West Point 20 years ago. I had a military history instructor that told me you can't be a fat leader because you have to lead by example. You can't walk around looking like the Pillsbury Doughboy and then expect people to follow you into battle. So this is an actual standard that should be within you. It should be a part of your own ethos. You should lead from the front and lead by an example. And it's something that I actually choose to do every single day. As a congressman in this district, I find time to work out every single day because I want the people in my district and the state of Texas to see a strong leader. If you can't take care of yourself, how can you possibly think about taking care of business and your family and representing the strongest, most elite fighting force that this world has ever seen? And most importantly, I can't believe we're having this conversation. We're talking about having a new sheriff in town, but these standards should have never been laxed in the first place. If you're an admiral, if you are a general, you are actually asking our sons and daughters to go to war and to fight for something. You better be in shape, you better look right, and you better meet the standard. Because if we don't meet these standards, then we're actually going to lose lives in battle. And that's what this whole thing is about. So again, I commend the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, for doing this. I commend him calling the leaders, putting them in one room and saying this: meet the standard or get out. It is that simple. We want to have the most elite and capable fighting force in the world to be able to fight at a moment's notice, and you can't be fat and do that.
I've seen a lot more videos of his since I pulled that down, and I really like that guy. He tells it like it is, and that's the Republican response, and it's kind of the response that I expected from the Republicans. So do you guys agree or disagree with what he had to say?
Totally agree.
Very much.
100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the toughest men I met was when a Ranger Regiment first started up back in, I got pulled out of the 82nd, went down to Fort Benning. I was supposed to be a lieutenant colonel's RTO. I ended up going to Ranger Recon, and Colonel Downing, who became General Downing, even when he was a general, You did not want General Downing to show up and say, hey, can I run PT with your team? Can I do PT with you guys? You were in for a long day if this general showed up, because he would run his ass off, or he would do more push-ups than you or more sit-ups. And this guy, was in his 50s, and we were all in our 20s and early 30s, and he was smoking our ass. That's the type of person you want to follow into combat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it goes back to leadership by example. And, Hegseth, we're going to kind of skip around a little bit. I think we can all agree, number one, that getting rid of all the DEI and identity policies, the politics is a win-win. Yes, is it going to affect retention and recruitment for a bit? Yeah. But since Trump outlawed all the DEI stuff, recruitment in the military has increased. So I think that's a good thing. But he's talked about reversing stupid rules of engagement. Field commanders will receive streamlined ROEs, which will empower violence, precision, and ferocity against threats. And he criticized past restrictions as handcuffs on warriors, promising faster and more decisive operations. 100%. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been over there to where the ROEs can like you said, can handcuff you. Now, there's a lot of the opposition is saying, well, no, he's saying he's going to throw the Geneva Convention out the window. No, that's not what he said. But, having the fact, when was it Somalia, Sue, when CNN was on the beach before Marine Corps?
Marines come ashore.
Yeah, marching Marines come ashore. No, that's not the way things should work. And like they got upset because the press and Congress wasn't told about the last strike when we struck Iran. You know what? It's called operational security. It's called OPSEC for a reason, because we don't want your dumbasses letting people know that we're coming, because that's not the way it should work. So I don't think his streamlining of the ROEs is going to be as big of an issue as people think. And let's talk about that one. We're going to run over tonight, folks. You guys are welcome to stay with us.
Yeah. Bottom line is, when you're talking about rules of engagement, everybody from the top brass all the way down to that private standing, he should be allowed to defend himself. If he needs to lock and load and he needs to send a bullet down range, he better number one know that, okay, I was defending myself. And will it hold up in court? That's all you got to remember. Will it hold up in court? I had to defend myself or I was going to get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same way as any of us now that carry on the daily. Yeah. If I have my Glock on me and I have to pull it out and use it, I had to be ready to be ready to defend myself in court on it. And I'm going to do a shameless plug for Troy's Gate real quick, folks. Get to Troy's Gate, do the training. It is a definite game changer. And if you want to know more about that, go back and watch Bob Toombs' Mountain Readiness podcast from a week ago, not this past Monday, but a week ago. Randy was on there with him, along with Sue. And I can't stress enough how good that training is. And get any type of training.
It's not marksmanship training. It's psychological training.
It's psychological training. And talking about training, he came out talking about reducing mandatory training, getting rid of all the administrative woke training and all the deaths by PowerPoint, more range time, more practical skills, doing the practical skills necessary. Absolutely agree with that. When I taught as an instructor after I retired, we had a 25 computer lab for them to get all of their computer-based training done that they had to have before they deployed, because it was just in time training before they deployed. But we had them do that. They knock all those out. And then the rest of the week we were in the field. We sent them to the range. They got qualified if they weren't already. We did CPR or self-aid buddy care practical training on them and all that stuff. That's the stuff, that practical stuff that we need to train on more. Practical stuff on your job, not just watching a freaking computer learning how to do something. Well, hey, even something as simple as learning how to fill out a freaking travel voucher, and they have that freaking system, which is harder to do it than writing it down anymore.
Let's be honest, Russ. I mean, shortly before I retired, Paulie, he was in he probably remembers this more than I do, but most of the mandatory training they were having you do were geared towards don't ask, don't tell, or DEI, or what do we call that? Sharp training.
Yeah.
Oh, you might say something. You might say a word that offends these three females out of 100. I don't give a shit.
Yep.
I don't need to be walking on eggshells. But let's just call it for what it was, and that's what I think.
Yes, in the military, it was sexual abuse.
Get rid of indoctrination. That's where the indoctrination came from. Because if you didn't do this mandatory training, then they shut off your computer. But everything you needed to do as far as paperwork goes, you needed to get on a computer. But if they shut down your military account because you failed to do the indoctrination or you didn't answer the questions right, I saw it for what it was, and that's what made me decide I'm done. I'm retiring. No more of this. I don't need to do this.
Exactly right, and that runs us into runs perfectly into the next topic: accountability over on anonymity. Anonymous complaints that were deemed coward, that could be considered deemed cowardly, will no longer derail careers. Saying something that could be taken out, that could possibly be taken out of context, that could ruin an NCO or senior NCO's career. Now, if it can be proven that it was legit, then by all means, freaking bust his ass down and make an example of it. If it's against prejudicial, against good military order, and was a good military order and discipline. That's the words I'm looking for. But a freaking joke that's what it is. It's a joke, and being in the military, especially in the career field I was in, and you guys understand the career fields you guys were in, you got to have a thick skin. And, in all honesty, there are some young ladies that were in my career field that I would go to war with in a split minute over some of the guys that I knew, because they were hard chargers. They do their job. They never complained. And, they lived up to what needed to be done. So the next video, I'm going to play the video, and I want you to think about this while you watch this video, is what do you think about all the generals and senior enlisted being called to the same spot? And I'm going to play this video real quick, and then we'll talk about that.
Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are.
This is a stunning violation of operational security that puts Americans at risk. By announcing where all of our top military leadership are gathered, Pete Hegseth effectively handed our adversaries a target. Our military leadership does not need a lecture from a talk show host about warrior ethos. Over years of service, they've proven their effective leadership and need to be forward deployed at their posts, keeping us safe. This meeting is a distraction and a dangerous waste of time.
Okay, so if you don't know who that is Mara Sullivan. She's a former Marine. She's running for the Democratic Congress seat in New Hampshire, District 1. You notice
background?
I'm not sure what she was in the Corps. If you can Google that real quick, because if I try it, I might lock up and everything else.
What was her name?
But the Mara Sullivan. But here's the deal. Her complaint was from an OPSEC view. She obviously had nothing else to say other than that was her only little talking point, because that's the only thing I've been able to find on her in regards to a talking point with that. Do you guys think that was a breach of operational security, or do you think it was the best way to handle the situation in which Hegseth wanted to get the point across?
I think it was perfect.
The fact the way Hegseth did it?
Yeah.
I don't disagree with
don't do it soon.
Well,
Yeah,
I got another situation.
It's
if that's operational, if that's an OPSEC violation and it's a handing the enemy a target, then what is AUSA? Where all the generals from the Army come to Washington D.C. to talk about who gets the piece of the pie, or same thing for down there in Quantico, Marine Corps Day. All the generals come from all the different sectors of the world, and they're there for that 1 week where they all rubbing hands and stuff like that. AUSA's in Washington, D.C. at the Reagan building. So right there, it's a violation too. I mean, the enemy could hit us then too. And that's why the terrorists tried to fly a plane into the Pentagon, because they think that, in case you didn't know, the Pentagon doesn't do a damn thing to win a war, right? It's all about cutting the budget, right? But,
oh yeah,
I'll agree with you guys. Pete Hegseth knows enough, and he's got enough military experience to know that if you get your group of people that you're delivering a message to in front of you in the same room, nobody can use the excuse, well, I didn't understand it, or I didn't see it that way, or that mandatory training we were just talking about. I didn't really, I just kind of hit next on the slideshow. I didn't really read the slides.
I've never done that.
There's no mistaking. Those generals leave that room. There's no mistaking. Those generals and sergeants major, there are a bunch of sergeant majors in there. Everybody has it right in their lap. You heard what your secretary said.
Yep.
So a little
hold on, Polly.
Go ahead.
And he told them during that, he says, yes, everything that I'm talking about is in your emails right now, and every one of your divisions and below in their emails right now. So I agree with you. You have your audience in front of them. You have the leadership of all these people in there, and they're saying, okay, this is what the standard is going to be. You're also getting it via email. There's no gray area.
And the other thing is
none. So, Paulie, what did you find out?
The idiot that was speaking, the lady, whatever you said that thing was. But okay, so we teach to lead from the next rank down. So a sergeant teaches a corporal, the staff sergeant teaches the sergeant, the general teaches, or the 4-star teaches the 3-star, on down. It's not everybody. You can take out a company commander. Hey, guess what? The company gun is going to shoot you. So her going off is just
know your job, and the one above you and the one below you.
It's just libtard dumb assery.
Yeah. Know your job, the one above you and the one below you.
General ain't going to hurt our military.
All right, what did you find out, Paulie?
So Miss Sullivan worked in logistics while in the Corps, and then she got out and she worked for PepsiCo and Frito-Lay.
So she filled our vending machines at the company office.
Logistics. I tell her all the time, those Marines must have got awful hungry when they ran out of bullets.
Like I said, she filled the snack thing, the snack machine in the company headquarters.
And then for all her attitude that she had on her little social media post, apparently she's served as the assistant to the SecDef for public affairs. So I feel like even her approach on social media is not the public affairs way of doing things. You're supposed to pretty it all up and make it appealing for everyone, make them want to share it.
Absolutely.
And
I
feel like she's at Starbucks complaining about her iced latte every day.
Yeah, Hegseth mentioned social media. Ban on anonymous unit level social media pages that trash commanders, demoralize troops, undermine unit cohesion. And I think if your social media, number one, if you're in the military, you should be able to have your social media scrubbed. And if you are in uniform and making derogatory comments about the military or the government, then you should face the consequences. Much like a lot of these civilians found out, making derogatory comments after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. They got fired for it because that morality clause is in a lot of their paperwork. 100% agree.
So you guys might not agree with me on this, but I was very aware and understood that when I was in, I was a person, but I was not an individual. I was property of the United States Navy from 2002 to 2006.
Absolutely.
They owned me. They had a contract. When I admit I went UA for 12 days, and as soon as I came back, they read me the riot act and tore me apart. But I understood that's because I'm government property at that time. You don't get to have an opinion on how the government's being run. You just, for lack of a better word, you shut the fuck up and do what you're told.
I mean,
that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I spent 20 years, and in those 20 years, I never once voted. My first 8 years was overseas. Then I was, I never was in South Carolina, and I didn't understand the whole absentee ballot thing. Still don't agree with it necessarily, but I never voted because number one, in my brain, my South Carolina brain was, it didn't matter who was in because I still had to follow their orders. Now, I have since been in. Yes, I am. I readily admit it, and my lovely bride has gotten me off my ass, and I voted ever since I retired. And having to do all these podcasts, I'm now into politics, and I hate that. But it just is what it is. And that was me.
It got so out of hand, and that's where I will say that the last administration and even during the Obama years, that social media thing got out of hand. I'm just like Paulie. I believe that I was, especially the projects I worked on when I worked at staff. When we talk about jokes or the wrong word being misconstrued, we all know that I called the USASOC secretary a fag, which was an acronym meant former action guy. I had no idea he was short, fat, black, and homosexual. Right. That was the end. But my punishment was that was the end. I was never allowed on a team again. I worked staff for the rest of the time I was in Iraq. Working on staff, I refused to get Facebook. I refused to get Twitter. I refused X. I don't have Instagram. I still don't. I don't believe in social media because when you're out there, not only can you compromise a lot of things that you're working on, right? Mm-hmm. And there's hackers. The dark web can use your social media to get into your other accounts, i.e. your government accounts. Mm-hmm. But the things that I saw on that other people were posting on their social media, especially this one, I wrote it down, Chris Beck, who became Christine Beck, the first Navy SEAL. He was actually retired, but he was SEAL Team 6 guy, Bronze Star, everything, became Christina Beck. Went out all over social media. It's demoralizing to the entire force. When you're watching, guys that you thought you had respect for start wearing dresses, putting on makeup, or these little fur babies that these guys are running around in, or that one Marine that was wearing the dog mask in his official military photo.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what you do behind closed doors in a bedroom, right? That has nothing to do with a political stance, and it damn sure doesn't have anything to do with accomplishing the mission. Leave it behind the closed doors in the bedroom, and don't put it on social media, especially if you're still in uniform.
Absolutely. I mean, Sue, you and I've had this discussion, and we had it earlier in May, back when, I went clean shaven in order to put my military uniform back on for my nephew's graduation and rendering him his first salute. I did the best I could to get back as close to the weight standard as I could. I did look I had a good enough military appearance to where I felt that I was comfortable to be in the uniform, and I did what I had to do. And Sue, we joke with you all the time over on Angry's podcast about you being the only one that doesn't have facial hair. But you and I have discussed that, and we discussed it on the podcast as to why you don't, because you put your uniform back on a whole lot more than I ever will, because you do it in order to render final honors to some of our fallen brethren. And, my hat's off to you on that, brother. You know that. I mean, that stuff like that is near and dear to my heart. Roy, you wouldn't put your Marine Corps uniform back on if you didn't think you fit into the standard. I know.
Ain't no way I fit in the standards right now.
Well, I know you wouldn't. I mean, I don't either. But you would, if you had an opportunity to wear, hey, like for my instance, my nephew wanted me to be there, and if you had, maybe your new grandson, in 18 years decides he wants to go in and he wants you to be there, you would do your damnedest to get back into the standard to be able to properly represent yourself in the Marine Corps.
I would, yes.
You would,
that's
but
pride. You got to have pride in your body.
It is, and that's the way us old guys, especially, we were brought up. I just can't. I mean, I could have put a suit on and done it, but no, my nephew wanted me to be in uniform, so that's what I did. And it was hard, and I've gained a couple pounds back, but nothing major, and I'm growing the facial hair back because I like it, and it is what it is. So, man, we've been going over an hour. We hit most of the points. I think we'll touch a little bit on how about the resign or align mandate for the leaders. The generals and admirals that are unable to embrace the warrior ethos should resign now. Well, let's touch on that one, and then we'll go around the horn. And adios. I don't disagree with it because, like you mentioned earlier, Roy, there's always somebody else that's willing to step up. And that's it. It's time for these generals and these senior leaders to step up or step off. Pave the way for a new breed that has that warrior ethos, is willing to embrace that warrior ethos.
There ain't no leadership triangle.
What?
No, I mean, I agree.
What'd you say, Roy?
No, go ahead.
I said there's no lumps in the leadership triangle. It goes up to the top.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you can't do the job, it's time for you to leave and let somebody else step up. You should be training the future of the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, if you want to call it that too. Whatever branch you're in, you should be training the next generation. If you're past your time, just because you're comfortable where you are doesn't mean you stay where you are. I mean, pretty sure that when everybody else got out, it was uncomfortable, waking up at 8 o'clock in the morning and being like, okay, what do I do now? Because I was used to being up at 5 a.m. every day. And now, I think my first 3 years after getting out was like, oh, okay, I'm uncomfortable doing this. I want to go back. But no, they need to go. If they're not going to do their jobs.
I'll give you, well, it's mostly sergeant majors that I have, enlisted. We're all enlisted. It's those guys that get up and start playing politics with everybody, or start, trying to tell us, the sky is red when we know it's blue type crap. And I did a paper in my advanced NCO course, and I did a comparison to the Russian army. And I said, the only equivalent to a sergeant major in the Russian army is the political officer that tries to tell you that communism is good. But I give you a name, and everybody's going to look like you bit into a lemon when I say it, but General Milley was a perfect example of what happens to a leader when he goes political. He had no right, especially the last election, or the election in 2020, he had no right calling his counterpart in China and saying, don't worry, I got everything. He broke the chain of command. He committed treason, in my opinion. He broke the chain of command, and Milley thought that he basically controlled the military left, right, and center. He does not. The commander-in-chief does. The Secretary of Defense is in between those two, you know. So General Milley is a perfect example of why somebody that gets a big head like that or can't meet the standards needs to resign immediately or be fired. He should have been fired.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that we haven't heard of any, resignations or firings as of yet since then. I think it's coming. I think we're going to see some, and I don't. I mean, like you said, Roy. Bye, Felicia. For the betterment of the military. Yes, there are going. You can call the Air Force the chair force all you want. Majority of the Air Force is exactly that.
Yeah, but it might be an ejection chair.
It may be an ejection chair, but the thing is, even with the pilots, they have a fitness standard, and most of them adhere to it because if not, they don't get that flight pay, and they're all about it. But then you have people that work in other career fields that all they do is sit behind a desk. Hey, you need to meet the standards, especially senior NCOs, and I was guilty of it. When I was getting ready to retire, I was right at my max when I retired. I just had knee surgery, of course, so I couldn't do any PT. But it is what it is, and I had a waiver before that, but it wasn't a waiver enough to where they couldn't send me to Iraq. They still sent me. It is what it is. So I think we had a pretty good conversation tonight, fellas. I enjoyed this. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. Having been in the military. I will always support the military as best I can. I don't always agree with some of the politics that they've gotten into recently, which I'm glad that Secretary Hegseth is looking to fix that. I am a product of wall-to-wall counseling. When I came in, I was a smartass, even more so than I am today, believe it or not. And a couple of young NCOs took me into the garage and bounced me between the wall and a peacekeeper. And it fixed my attitude pretty quick. No bones were broken. Pride was hurt, and that fixed it. And I think, I want to touch on this real quick before we go. Talking about basically, Hegseth has taken the reins off DIs and TIs. Being able to conduct shark attacks and toss bunks and swear at recruits and put hands on recruits. And that's the one that's the sticky one that people are going ape shit about. Number one, 100% agree with every bit of that. And what they're talking about with the putting hands on recruits is making them get into the right position. Making sure you touch them, not having to say, "Can I pretty please touch you to help you get your salute right?" No, basic training is there to take you from where you're at to break you down to zero and build you back up into a Marine, an Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard. That's what it's there for. It's designed to break you out of that civilian mode and make you into a military individual.
Well, nowadays that phrase "get right" or "I'm going to get you right," it doesn't hit the same as it did 20 years ago. It's they can't touch you.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think, Roy?
I can tell you that Julie brought up a point. In '97, she went to learn how to work on C-130 engines in the Nevada National Guard out there when I was teaching up in Bridgeport. And she came back and she was talking about people having timeouts, where if the instructor was yelling at them or whatever, they could actually time out. And she tells that story.
Yeah, here's my timeout card.
I heard about it. I never saw it.
We talked about that last night too.
Yeah, you know me. I'm a kind of a hands-on kind of instructor. If you're too close to the little round thing that's going to cut your eyebrow open, I'm going to slap you in the back of the head and make you scoot back. If your ankles ain't flat, I'm going to stand on them. They'll flatten. but that's not hurting nobody. That's how I was trained, and
No.
I'm fine. You know, I don't have no issues. So adjusting somebody's salute, you know, that's awesome. You know, smacking somebody in the back of the head to get their attention, all for it. Slapping somebody in the back of their head and breaking 6 vertebrae, yeah, that might be a bit much, but then I think that needs to be investigated.
You know,
But these folks,
perfect example. A perfect example. Live fire, throwing a live hand grenade.
Yeah, hands on.
Okay. So hands on, throwing a hand grenade, you throw it, and if you decide to keep your head up, that instructor damn well better drag your ass down to keep you safe. That's putting hands on. But no, you can't do that. Well, then, okay, guess what? You're going to get your permanent total disability a whole lot quicker than
nobody
you thought you would.
complains about getting
What do you
thrown
think,
out of
Sue?
a grenade pit.
well, I think
No.
this is a perfect example of this conversation going full circle. Remember when we said, you know, if I'm at an air base or an airfield somewhere next to the coast, and the 4 of us end up having to jump out to wire and defend that air base, that Sun Tzu said it, to send troops into combat without training is to waste the troops. You're just wasting your time. You're going to get everybody killed, right? So everybody, I think basic training, especially basic training, and I don't care which service, and all 4 of them represented right here in this little quadrangle here. I mean, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Army. If you're going to basic training, it should be scary. The standard should be high, and you should basically know how to defend yourself and defend a person left and right of you. And I don't care what weapon you end up running up behind. Everybody, I hate that fact that only certain MOSs get to touch this weapon or the Carl Gustav or something. I think everybody should be trained on mortars, the rifles, the pistols, sniper rifles, you know, at least know how to use it, you know. Granted,
know where the safety is so you can pull the bang switch.
Yeah, be able to use it and train and just at least get a good introduction to it. And if you're not doing it right, get your ass kicked until you do get it right.
I know at MCT we spent a
might
week.
Save your life someday. Look at the Battle of the Bulge. It was cooks and bakers that saved that. They filled in those foxholes when the 101st and 82nd showed up. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah, I know at MCT back in 2003, before I retired, non-infantry is what I was teaching. So you had like 10 days of weapons familiarization. It is 10 days of different weapon systems. How do you load it? How do you clean it? Where do
enemy weapons. I mean, if you got to pick up, if you got to battlefield recover an enemy weapon, know how to use the damn thing.
Make sure there's not a plug in the barrel. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, I think, you know, especially being in the Air Force and Paulie from the Navy, you know, our weapons training. And I was talking to an Air Force buddy of mine today, who was also a combat arms guy like I was, that we worked at the firing range. And, you know, we were discussing that, you know, being able, you know, when I got out, if you were not a cop or not civil engineering, dirt boys specifically, and Joe Niermeier's not in here. He's a dirt boy. They fired once a year for qual. Cops fired twice a year. Everybody else fired every 3 years or when they deployed. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, Sue, you were in the Army. You remember back before you went SF that if you were like in Italy in '86, we had some Army helicopters come in, and the Army was guarding their own helicopters, their own resources, but their ammo pouches had a metal seal on them, and their guns didn't have any ammo. But that's the way they had to have it. Whereas, you know, these are guys, they're corporals, spec fours that are probably 19, 20, 21, and you got A1C Sawyer, who was 18 at the time, sitting behind an M60 with 120,000 rounds of belted ammo with him, or A1C Sawyer carrying an M16 with a 203 with 18 rounds of high explosives with him.
Yeah,
and we had rounds.
I hope we never go back to those days because, well,
I think it's ridiculous.
Case. I remember getting called out, and it turned out to be Grenada, but I thought we were going to Lebanon or to Syria because the Marines had just lost 250 of their brothers. They were standing guard at that airfield.
October 23rd of 1983.
And they were not allowed to put magazines into their weapons. And that van drove right past their right into
my son's godfather, John Delgado, was with the 8th Marines there at the barracks. And he will tell you that they actually had electric tape over their tops of their magazines so that if a round was stripped, the NCOs would know that you loaded your weapon. That was ridiculous back then.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Well, and even as early as I'll say it that way, or as late as 2004, I'm in Kirkuk Air Base, Iraq, and we're cops. We carry our weapons loaded. We carried our 9 mils with the round in the chamber on fire. That's the way we were set up. And we get there. We're going into the dining facility, and this Army Sergeant Major. This was Sergeant Major, First Sergeant, Army First Sergeant was like, "Hey, you need to clear your weapon before you enter the dining facility." I'm like, "No." I just kept walking, and he goes, "Wait a minute, Sergeant. You got to do this." No, you need to check yourself. I said, because he's a first sergeant, so that's an E8, and I was E7 at the time, and I was polite with him. I said, "No, sir." I said, "Our regulation states this is the way we carry it," and I already checked with our leadership here because we're new to the base, new to the FOB. This is the way me and my guys will be carrying our Berettas, and if you have a problem, then you can go and talk to that lieutenant colonel over there. My commander happened to be in the DFAC at the time. I pointed to him. You can go talk to him, see what he has to say. And then I became friends with the Army Sergeant Major that was there. He was from the 173rd. I think 173rd was in Kirkuk at the time. Sergeant Major Sato. I don't know if you happen to know him or not, Sue, but great guy. He was definitely old school. Cheese Doodles in the house. Happy birthday, young lady. Yes, you can tell your dad we are running late, but we don't care because he's not here. So, but we are getting ready to wrap up here shortly. But Cheese Doodle is Pete's daughter. Everybody wave and wish happy birthday to her. I think Hegseth is doing the right thing. I think calling them in all at once, we talked about that, is the right thing. So let's go around the horn and let's see here. I'm going to keep us all on screen because I don't know how the hell Pete did it because with all 4 of us. So Paulie, give us some parting words.
Well, to stick with the message of what Hegseth said, it's time for people to get right or get left, and I think those are great words to live by in everyday life anyway. That's all I got.
Yeah, absolutely. And we determined Sue was senior. So Roy, I'm
just glad to see pride coming back and what we hold dear to our hearts. If you've got pride, that instills mental toughness and it goes from there. So you project that to those that are going to FAFO. Maybe we don't have to go faraway places. Maybe we, because they know what's coming if they screw around. So I'm looking forward to the changes. I'm hoping, every day I get up and the feet hit the floor first, I get to see great changes. I'm proud of it. And for that, thanks for having me on here. It's good seeing you. You're the 3, and we'll see each other again soon.
Oh yeah, you'll actually see all of us at Fallout because you're going to be at Fallout, aren't you, Sue? Yep. All of us will be at Fallout here shortly. So, Sue, parting words.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said about Pat Schroeder. The Army, the military is not a social experiment. And I think the dumbing down or the like what happened in Lebanon, us looking too intimidating, those days have got to be past us, because remember, it's a volunteer force. We're sending, people like Paulie and everything, they volunteer to go. I was so surprised after 9/11 of all the kids that came in knowing exactly where they were going, that they volunteered. So when you volunteer, or when you send your sons and daughters or your grandchildren or your nieces and nephew in the military, you need to push the Congress to say, hey, if they go into a combat zone, they're locked and loaded and they can defend themselves with the might of the United States. And I don't care if it's overseas or if you're a National Guard going to Memphis and Chicago and Washington, D.C., you're locked and loaded. You're there and you mean business. And hopefully you're trained to do it. So I think that's what the military's for. Any other deviation from that is just pure bullshit. And Roy, I'm just saying, I love those Marine Corps uniforms, and if I could wear one, matter of fact, I tried to go to the Marine Corps, but my recruiter said that my ASVAB score was too high, so I wasn't allowed to go. So
I'll tell you a funny story. Is way back in the day, I tried to go in the Air Force when I met Julie, and I could go LE like Russ and them. I was going to get out of the grunts. My dad was the police. I was going to be the police. Air Force recruiter said, I can't take you. You've been in more than 2 years. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you're brainwashed. I put my feet on his desk, leaned back, and said, dude, I can change. And he said, we can't do it. Fast forward to the Somalia float of that. I sent a 237-page package to Headquarters Marine Corps, and that was when the Army opened up the Warrant Officer Flight Program. And I was very high, ratings and had me a school seat for the Army Warrant Officer Program. So I tried to do things and not just be an armed janitor when I retired. So
how did you write 237 pages in crayon?
You know what?
Oh, wow. Good one, Paulie.
Oh,
well, on guys, on that note,
you laugh. Where's this thing at?
I know. Well, and
a little snack after the show, huh?
Yeah, but before I sign us off here, Roy wanted the very first hard copy of my book that I received. So I called him the day I got the books in. I opened it up on video. Roy's watching. We have it on video, and I'm sitting there and I'm signing. And I thought to myself, I said, "Damn, I should have signed it in crayon." And I completely
just don't
forgot.
do it in red, because then I would lick it clean. Red is my
then
favorite.
you'll lick it clean, and if it's purple, you'll try to eat the book. So, and there are no pictures in it. I'm sorry, Roy, but I am working on the Audible for you. Hopefully, it'll be out in November. On that note, guys, we're going to call this show a wrap. Y'all know my normal tagline: if you can't be everybody's, better be somebody's glass of whiskey than everybody's cup of tea. And as always, be like Pete says: if you can't be safe, if you can't be safe, be dead.
Thanks for watching the Eden Army podcast. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And remember, be safe.